Your brain is more powerful now than it ever was in your 20s. That is not a motivational quote from a greeting card. That is not something your friend says to make you feel better about getting older. That is a verified finding from modern neuroscience. And tonight I want to talk directly to you about what it means. If you were born in the 1960s, you have walked one of the most extraordinary paths any generation has ever traveled. You crossed from a fully analog world into a digital one. You survived economic catastrophe at the worst possible moment. You held families together through chaos. You endured workplace cultures that would break most people today. And now, as you approach or pass your 60th birthday, the world wants you to believe your best days are behind you. The world is wrong. Everything science knows about the human brain says the opposite. The wisdom you carry right now in this very moment is something no younger generation can replicate. No app can download it. No search engine can find it. It was built one hard day at a time across 6 decades of living. And it is magnificent. Tonight we are going to walk through the science of why your mind is entering its most powerful phase. We are going to revisit the landscapes of your youth. We are going to talk about what the bubble economy taught your nervous system. We are going to explore why your ability to read a room is neurologically superior to anything a 25-year-old can do. And we are going to talk about what all of this means for the next chapter of your life. So settle in. Let the tension in your shoulders soften for a moment. You have earned this time. You have earned every second of what comes next. Let us begin with something most people completely misunderstand about the human brain. When you were in your 20s, your brain was fast. It could memorize a phone number after hearing it once. It could learn a new skill in days. It could pull an all-nighter and still function the next morning. That speed is what scientists call fluid intelligence. It is the raw processing power of a young mind. And yes, it peaks somewhere around age 25. After that, it begins a slow and steady decline. This is the part that every magazine article loves to remind you about. This is the part that makes you feel like you are losing something every single year. But here is what those articles almost never mention. There is a second kind of intelligence. It is called crystallized intelligence. And it does not decline with age. It grows. It deepens. It becomes more refined and more powerful with every passing year. Crystallized intelligence is not about speed. It is not about how fast you can memorize a list. It is about how well you understand the world. It is the ability to walk into a complicated situation and know what is really going on. It is the ability to hear what someone is not saying. It is the ability to sense when something is about to go wrong before anyone else notices. It is the ability to make a decision under pressure that turns out to be exactly right. And according to the latest neuroscience research, this kind of intelligence reaches its absolute peak in your 60s. Not your 20s. Not your 30s. Not your 40s. Your 60s. Right now. Right where you are sitting. Your brain is completing a masterpiece that took 60 years to build. Think about what that means for a moment. Every mistake you ever made taught your brain something. Every failure carved a new pathway. Every argument and every reconciliation added another layer. Every sleepless night worrying about money or children or aging parents wove another thread into the tapestry of your understanding. None of it was wasted. Your brain kept every single lesson. And now it has assembled all of those lessons into something extraordinary. A kind of wisdom that operates faster than conscious thought. You know it as intuition. You know it as gut feeling. You know it as that quiet voice that says something is not right here. But neuroscience knows it as the most sophisticated cognitive achievement the human brain can produce. Let me tell you exactly why your generation is special. And I mean that in the most literal scientific sense. You were born into a world without smartphones, without GPS navigation, without the internet, without email, without text messaging, without any of the digital scaffolding that younger people cannot imagine living without. When you wanted to meet someone, you had to plan ahead. You had to agree on a time and place days in advance. You had to trust that the other person would show up. And when they were late, you had no way to check on them. You waited. You stood at a train station or outside a coffee shop and you simply waited. Maybe 30 minutes. Maybe an hour. Maybe longer. There was no screen to scroll through. There was no social media feed to numb the anxiety. There was just you and your thoughts and the uncertain hope that they would come. Think about what that did to your brain. Every single time you navigated uncertainty, your brain built new neural pathways. Every single time you solved the problem without a search engine, your prefrontal cortex grew a little stronger. Every single time you trusted another human being in the absence of digital confirmation, your social intelligence deepened. The neuroscience term for this is cognitive reserve. Your brain built up an enormous reservoir of problem-solving architecture during those analog decades. And that reservoir is what makes you so remarkably resilient today. Now compare that to the experience of someone born in the 1990s or 2000s. From their earliest memories, a screen has always been within reach. They grew up with answers available instantly. They never had to sit with uncertainty for more than a few seconds. They never had to memorize a phone number because their phone stores them all. They never had to read a paper map because GPS tells them every turn. They never had to wait at a train station wondering because a text message resolves everything in seconds. This is not their fault. It is simply the environment they grew up in. But it means their brains developed differently from yours. The parts of the brain that handle uncertainty and improvisation and patience did not get the same workout in their generation. When the system works, they are brilliant. They can navigate apps and platforms with breathtaking speed. But when the system fails, something interesting happens. When the GPS loses signal, they panic. When the internet goes down, they feel lost. When a situation arises that has no clear manual or tutorial, they often freeze. Their stress response kicks in hard and fast. Because their brains never had to build that deep infrastructure for handling the unknown. Your brain did. Your brain was forged in uncertainty. Let me take you back to a specific memory. You probably had a cassette player when you were young. Maybe it was a boombox. Maybe it was a portable player you carried around. And you wanted to record your favorite song off the radio. You could not just download it. You could not stream it. You had to wait for it to come on. You had to sit there with your finger hovering over the record button. Listening. Waiting. The DJ would talk and your heart would pound because you did not know exactly when the song would start. And then the first notes would play and you would slam that button down with everything you had. Record and play at the same time. That satisfying click of the buttons going down together. And you would hold your breath, hoping nobody would walk into the room. Hoping the phone would not ring. Hoping a car horn outside would not blast at the wrong moment. And sometimes it worked perfectly. You got the whole song clean from the first note to the last. And the joy you felt was enormous. A small triumph that meant the world. And sometimes it did not work. Somebody coughed. A door slammed. The DJ talked over the intro. And you would have to wait days or even weeks for that song to come on again. That experience might seem small and silly when you describe it to a younger person. They might laugh. They might not understand why it mattered. But your brain understands. Because every single moment of that experience was training your mind in ways that matter enormously. You were learning patience. You were learning to focus intensely on something without any guarantee of success. You were learning to handle disappointment gracefully. You were learning that good things require waiting and effort, and sometimes luck. You were learning that failure is not the end of the story. You were learning to try again. These are not trivial skills. These are the foundational capacities that make a person resilient and resourceful and wise. And you learn them not from a textbook but from living them over and over again in 1,000 small moments across your youth. Your brain recorded all of it. Every moment of patience built neural pathways for emotional regulation. Every moment of focused attention strengthened your prefrontal cortex. Every disappointment you handled gracefully taught your amygdala to stay calm under pressure. And all of those pathways are still there inside you right now. They did not disappear when the world went digital. They grew stronger. Now let me take you to another memory. You needed to get somewhere you had never been before. There was no GPS. There was no navigation app. There was a paper map. Maybe a road atlas you kept in the glove compartment. Maybe a folded city map you bought at a gas station. You spread it out on the hood of your car or across your knees. You found where you were. You found where you needed to go. You traced a route with your finger. You made mental notes. Turn left at the big intersection. Look for the bridge. After the bridge, take the second right. And then you drove. And sometimes you made a wrong turn. And when you did, there was no friendly voice saying recalculating. There was just you and the map and the slowly dawning realization that nothing around you looked familiar. So you pulled over. Maybe you asked someone for directions. Maybe you stopped at a gas station and described where you were trying to go. And the person behind the counter would think for a moment, and then say something like, "Okay, you want to go back to that light, and make a right, and then go about 2 miles, and you will see a sign." And you would thank them and get back in the car and try again. Every single time you did this, your brain was building something incredible. It was building a spatial reasoning network that is far more robust than anything a GPS-dependent brain can produce. It was building a problem-solving reflex that activates automatically when things go wrong. It was building a social confidence that comes from asking strangers for help and trusting their answers. And it was building something even more important than all of that. It was building the deep, unshakable belief that you can figure things out. That belief lives in your bones now. It is not something you think about consciously. It is something you feel. When a problem comes up, your first instinct is not to panic. Your first instinct is to start working through it. To look at it from different angles. To ask questions. To try something and see what happens. That instinct is worth more than any college degree or technical certification. Because it means you can adapt to anything. And adaptation is the single most important survival skill a human being can possess. Now I want to talk about something that shaped your generation more than almost anything else. The economic earthquake that hit during the most critical years of your adult life. When you were in your 20s and early 30s, the economy was roaring. Everything seemed possible. Jobs were plentiful. Salaries were rising. Real estate was climbing. There was an electric energy in the air. People worked incredibly hard, but they also played hard. The work culture was intense. 12-hour days were normal. 14-hour days were admired. The unspoken rule was that dedication to your company came before everything else. Before your health. Before your hobbies. Before your family time. And most people accepted this because the rewards seemed to justify the sacrifice. The future looked limitless. You could endure the long hours because tomorrow was going to be better than today. That was the promise. That was what everyone believed. And then everything collapsed. The economic bubble burst with a violence that nobody saw coming. One day the world was golden, and the next day it was gray. Companies that had seemed invincible started laying people off. Real estate values plummeted. Banks that had been handing out loans like candy suddenly could not keep their doors open. The mood of an entire nation shifted from optimism to fear almost overnight. And you were right in the middle of it. Not as a child who could be sheltered from the impact. Not as a retiree who had already built a safety net. You were in the exact years when a person is supposed to be building the foundation of their adult life. Buying a home. Advancing in a career. Starting a family. Saving for the future. All of those plans suddenly became uncertain. And the psychological weight of that uncertainty was enormous. But you did not collapse. You kept going. You adjusted your expectations. You found new ways to make things work. You took on extra responsibilities. You tightened your budget. You swallowed your pride when it was necessary. You did whatever you had to do to keep your family stable and your household running. And you did it without anyone giving you a trophy or a round of applause. You just did it because it needed to be done. That experience changed your brain in ways that science is only now beginning to fully understand. There is a concept in psychology called post-traumatic growth. Most people have heard of post-traumatic stress. It is the idea that terrible experiences can leave lasting psychological damage. And that is real and important. But post-traumatic growth is the opposite side of the same coin. It is the scientifically documented phenomenon where people who survive extreme adversity do not just recover. They actually emerge stronger and wiser and more capable than they were before the crisis. Their brains literally reorganize themselves in response to the challenge. New neural connections form. Old ones become more efficient. The emotional regulation centers of the brain become more sophisticated. The ability to assess risk becomes sharper. The capacity for empathy and perspective taking deepens. And the overall resilience of the person increases dramatically. This is exactly what happened to you. The economic collapse did not break you. It forged you. It took the raw material of your already strong analog-trained brain and put it through a furnace of pressure and uncertainty. And what came out the other side was something extraordinary. A mind that can handle almost anything. A mind that has been tested by real crisis and proven itself capable. A mind that knows from first-hand experience that even when the world falls apart, life goes on and new opportunities eventually emerge. You carry that knowledge in every cell of your body. It is not theoretical knowledge you read in a book. It is lived knowledge. Earned knowledge. The kind of knowledge that cannot be faked or shortcut. And it is one of the most valuable things any human being can possess. But the economic collapse was only part of the story. There was another seismic shift happening at the same time. A shift in values and expectations that put your generation in an incredibly difficult position. When you entered the workforce, the culture was built on hierarchy and endurance. Respect was earned through years of loyal service. Seniority mattered. You were expected to defer to your elders without question. The phrase "that is just how things are done" was considered a perfectly acceptable explanation for almost anything. And the demands placed on workers were often unreasonable by any modern standard. Verbal abuse from supervisors was common. Working through illness was expected. Taking vacation was sometimes seen as a sign of weakness. You endured all of this because it was the price of entry. It was what everyone before you had endured. And you believed that if you paid your dues, your turn would come. You would eventually reach a position of authority, and the sacrifices would be rewarded. But then something happened that nobody anticipated. The rules changed. Almost overnight, the culture began to shift toward a new set of values. Efficiency. Compliance. Individual rights. Work-life balance. The old ways of doing things were suddenly called outdated and even harmful. The endurance you had displayed was no longer admired. It was questioned. The hierarchy you had respected was being dismantled. The sacrifices you had made were being dismissed as unnecessary relics of a bygone era. And you found yourself caught in the middle. Below you was a generation that had grown up with entirely different expectations. They wanted clear boundaries. They wanted fair treatment. They wanted their personal time respected. They wanted transparency. And above you were the remnants of the old guard who still operated by the traditional rules. You became the bridge between two completely different worlds. The mediator. The translator. The person who had to understand both sides and find a way to make them work together. That is an extraordinarily difficult position to occupy. And most people in your generation did it without recognition or complaint. You absorbed the frustration from both directions. You adapted your communication style constantly. You learned to speak the language of the old culture when talking to your seniors and the language of the new culture when talking to your juniors. You became fluent in both, and that fluency is itself a remarkable cognitive achievement. Think about what that required of your brain. It required constant perspective taking, constant emotional regulation, constant social calibration. You had to read rooms with precision. You had to sense tension before it erupted. You had to choose your words carefully depending on your audience. You had to manage your own frustration while managing everyone else. These are exactly the skills that crystallized intelligence is made of. And you have been practicing them for decades. Every difficult conversation you navigated added another layer to your social wisdom. Every conflict you de-escalated strengthened your emotional intelligence. Every time you bit your tongue when you wanted to explode, your prefrontal cortex gained a little more control over your limbic system. And now all of those years of practice have culminated in something genuinely remarkable. You can walk into almost any social situation and understand within seconds what is really going on beneath the surface. You can sense who is upset and why. You can tell when someone is lying. You can feel when a group dynamic is about to shift. You can read body language and tone of voice with an accuracy that borders on the uncanny. Younger people sometimes marvel at this ability. They call it a sixth sense or remarkable intuition. But it is not magic. It is the product of 60 years of intensive training in the most complex environment imaginable. The real human world. With all of its contradictions and subtleties and unspoken rules. No algorithm can replicate what your brain does when it reads a room. No artificial intelligence can match the depth of understanding you bring to a human interaction. Because your understanding was not programmed. It was lived. Now let me talk about what neuroscience has discovered about the aging brain that should change everything you believe about getting older. For decades, the dominant narrative has been one of decline. We have been told that the brain peaks in early adulthood and then slowly deteriorates. We have been told that memory loss is inevitable. That cognitive decline is just part of aging. That the best we can hope for is to slow down the process. But recent research using advanced brain imaging technology tells a very different story. Yes, certain types of cognitive speed decline with age. That is true. But the brain compensates for this in ways that are nothing short of extraordinary. When a young person in their 20s solves a problem, their brain typically activates one hemisphere. The left or the right, depending on the type of problem. It is fast and focused but also limited. When a person in their 60s solves the same problem, something different happens. Both hemispheres light up simultaneously. The brain recruits neural networks from across its entire structure. It draws on decades of stored experience. It cross-references patterns it has seen before. It integrates emotional memory with logical analysis. And it arrives at an answer that is not just correct but deeply informed, rich with context and nuance. This is called bilateral brain activation, and it is one of the most important discoveries in modern neuroscience. It means that your brain is not declining. It is evolving. It is doing something it could not do when it was younger. It is using its full capacity in a way that only becomes possible after decades of accumulated experience. Think of it this way. A 25-year-old brain is like a sprinter. Fast and explosive over short distances. A 60-year-old brain is like a master navigator. It may not run as fast, but it can find the best route through any terrain. It can see the whole landscape. It can anticipate obstacles before they appear. It can adjust course smoothly when conditions change. And it can do all of this with a calm confidence that comes from having traveled many roads before. This is why experienced leaders are so valuable. This is why the most trusted advisors in any field tend to be people with decades of experience. This is why grandparents so often have exactly the right words at exactly the right moment. Their brains are operating at a level of integration that younger brains simply have not reached yet. And your brain is one of those brains. Right now, in this moment, your mind is more capable of deep understanding and wise judgment than it has ever been. The things you struggle with are real. Forgetting a name occasionally. Needing a moment longer to recall a word. Feeling slower when trying to learn a new piece of technology. These are real experiences and they can be frustrating. But they are surface-level changes. They are like small waves on the surface of a very deep ocean. Beneath those waves, your cognitive ocean is vast and powerful and teeming with life. The depth of your understanding has never been greater. The accuracy of your intuition has never been sharper. The richness of your emotional intelligence has never been fuller. You are not fading. You are ripening. And ripening is not decline. It is the fulfillment of everything your brain was designed to become. Now I want to talk about what this means for the next chapter of your life. Because understanding this science is important, but what really matters is how you use it. For most of your adult life you have been living for other people. That is not a criticism. It is an observation. And it applies to almost everyone in your generation. You worked long hours to support your family. You sacrificed your personal interests to meet professional obligations. You put your own dreams on hold to make sure your children had opportunities. You took care of aging parents. You maintained relationships that required constant effort. You showed up every single day whether you felt like it or not. And you did all of this because you are a person of deep responsibility and genuine love. But there comes a point in life when the obligations begin to lighten. Children grow up and build their own lives. Careers reach their natural conclusion. The relentless pace of building and maintaining and providing begins to slow. And when it does, many people feel lost. They feel like their purpose has evaporated. They feel like they are no longer needed. They feel like the world is moving on without them. If you have felt any of this, you are not alone. It is one of the most common experiences for people in their late 50s and 60s. And it is one of the most painful. Because your identity has been so closely tied to your roles as a provider and a parent and a professional that when those roles change, it can feel like you are losing yourself. But here is what I need you to understand. You are not losing yourself. You are finding yourself. For the first time in decades. The roles you played were important. They were necessary. They were honorable. But they were not the whole of who you are. Beneath those roles there has always been a person with their own desires and curiosities and dreams. And that person has been waiting patiently for this moment. Psychology has a name for the transition you are entering. It is called self-transcendence. It is the stage of life where you stop defining yourself by external expectations and start defining yourself by internal truth. It is the stage where the question shifts from what do I need to do to what do I want to do. From who do people expect me to be to who am I really. This is not selfishness. This is the natural and healthy evolution of a mature mind. It is what your brain has been preparing for all along. All of those decades of serving others were not just acts of sacrifice. They were also acts of learning. You learned what matters to you by seeing what you were willing to fight for. You learned what brings you joy by noticing the moments that made the hardest days bearable. You learned what kind of person you want to be by observing the gap between who you had to be and who you wished you could be. And now you have the freedom to close that gap. You have the time. You have the wisdom. You have the emotional resilience. And most importantly, you have a brain that is perfectly engineered for this exact moment. The crystallized intelligence you carry is not just useful for solving problems. It is useful for creating a beautiful life. It gives you the ability to cut through noise and focus on what truly matters. It gives you the confidence to say no to things that drain you. It gives you the courage to say yes to things that excite you. It gives you the patience to build something meaningful without needing instant results. It gives you the grace to forgive yourself for the things you did not accomplish in the first half of your life. And it gives you the clarity to see that the second half is not a consolation prize. It is the main event. Everything that came before was preparation. This is the part where you get to live for real. I want you to think about something you have always wanted to do. Maybe it is traveling to a place you have dreamed about since you were young. Maybe it is learning to paint or play an instrument. Maybe it is writing down the stories of your life so that your grandchildren can know who you really are. Maybe it is starting a small project that has been living quietly in the back of your mind for years. Maybe it is simply giving yourself permission to rest without guilt. Whatever it is, I want you to know that your brain is ready for it. Your brain is not too old. Your brain is not too slow. Your brain is the most sophisticated version of itself that it has ever been. And it is hungry for new experiences. Neuroscience has shown that the aging brain responds powerfully to novelty. When you do something new, even something small, your brain releases dopamine and creates fresh neural connections. It does not matter if you are clumsy at first. It does not matter if you learn slowly. What matters is that you are engaging your brain in new ways. And when you do, your brain lights up like a city at night. Every new experience you have from this point forward is not just enjoyable. It is literally good for your brain. It strengthens the neural networks that keep your mind sharp. It reinforces the crystallized intelligence that is your greatest asset. And it creates new memories that become part of the tapestry of your wisdom. So please do not let anyone tell you that your best years are behind you. That is one of the most destructive lies our culture tells. Your best years are right now. And the years ahead can be even better. Because for the first time in your life you have both the wisdom to know what matters and the freedom to pursue it. That is a combination that very few people ever achieve. And you have it right now. Let me address something else that many people in your generation struggle with. The feeling of being left behind by technology. You watch younger people navigate their phones and computers with effortless speed. You see them master new apps in minutes while it takes you hours. And it can make you feel inadequate. Like the world has moved on to a language you cannot speak. But I want to reframe this for you. The speed with which young people use technology is not intelligence. It is familiarity. They grew up with these tools. Of course, they are comfortable with them. A child who grows up near the ocean learns to swim naturally. That does not make them smarter than someone who learned to swim later in life. It just means they had more practice in that particular environment. What matters is not how fast you can swipe a screen. What matters is what you do with the information you find there. And this is where your crystallized intelligence gives you an enormous advantage. A young person can find a piece of information in seconds. But they often lack the context to understand what it really means. They can read an article, but they may not be able to tell if it is trustworthy. They can follow a debate, but they may not recognize the patterns that reveal who is arguing in good faith and who is not. They can process data, but they struggle to see the bigger picture. You can see the bigger picture because you have lived the bigger picture. You have watched trends come and go. You have seen promises made and broken. You have witnessed how today's certainty becomes tomorrow's embarrassment. You have a built-in filter for information that no algorithm can replicate. So when you sit down at a computer or pick up a phone, yes, you might be slower at the mechanical part. But when you read something, you understand it at a deeper level. When you watch the news, you see patterns that younger viewers miss. When you encounter a new idea, you can evaluate it against 60 years of real-world experience. That is not a disadvantage. That is a superpower. And as artificial intelligence and information overload become bigger and bigger parts of modern life, that superpower is going to become more valuable than ever. Because the world does not need more people who can process information quickly. It needs people who can process information wisely. And that is exactly what you do. I also want to talk about loneliness. Because I know that many people your age experience it and very few feel comfortable talking about it. When your children were young, your house was full of noise and chaos. There were always people coming and going. The phone was always ringing. Every weekend was packed with activities and obligations. And even though it was exhausting, it gave you a sense of being needed, of being at the center of something important. Now the house may be quieter. The phone rings less often. The weekends stretch out with fewer demands. And sometimes in the stillness a feeling creeps in that is hard to name. It is not exactly sadness. It is more like a hollow space where purpose used to live. You might find yourself scrolling through old photographs, or standing in a room that used to be full and is now empty, or lying awake at 3 in the morning wondering if anyone would notice if you just stayed in bed all day. These feelings are real and they are valid. You do not need to be ashamed of them. Loneliness in this stage of life is incredibly common, and it says nothing about your worth as a person. It simply reflects the fact that the structure of your life has changed, and you have not yet built a new one to replace it. But here is the important thing. You can build a new one. And your brain is exceptionally well equipped to do so. Remember that social intelligence we talked about earlier. The ability to read people and understand unspoken dynamics and navigate complex relationships. That skill does not retire when your career ends. It is available to you in every interaction you have. At the grocery store. At a community center. In a park. Online. Wherever you go, you carry with you an extraordinary ability to connect with other human beings. And connection is the antidote to loneliness. It does not have to be grand or dramatic. A conversation with a neighbor. A phone call with an old friend. A smile exchanged with a stranger. These small moments of human contact activate the same neural pathways that deep relationships do. They remind your brain that you are part of a community, that you belong, that you matter. And if you want deeper connection, there are more opportunities available to you now than at any time in human history. Community groups, volunteer organizations, online communities built around shared interests, classes at local centers. All of these are doorways to connection. And your crystallized intelligence means you are better equipped than almost anyone to walk through those doors and build meaningful relationships on the other side. You know how to listen. You know how to share. You know how to be present with another person. These are rare and precious abilities in a world increasingly dominated by shallow digital interactions. Do not underestimate how much the world needs what you have to offer. There are younger people out there who are desperate for the kind of wisdom and warmth and stability that comes naturally to you. There are communities that would be transformed by your presence. There are conversations that need your voice. You are not obsolete. You are essential. The world just sometimes forgets to tell you that. So I am telling you now. You are essential. Your experience matters. Your wisdom matters. Your kindness matters. Your presence in this world matters more than you know. Now I want to talk about something that might surprise you. The relationship between aging and creativity. Most people assume that creativity is a young person's game. That the bold new ideas come from fresh minds unburdened by convention. And there is some truth to that. Young artists and innovators often bring a raw energy that is exciting and disruptive. But research shows that a different kind of creativity emerges in the second half of life. A deeper kind. A more meaningful kind. Young creativity tends to be revolutionary. It tears down the old and builds something shocking and new. But mature creativity tends to be integrative. It takes everything a person has learned and experienced and synthesizes it into something profound. Some of the greatest works of art and literature and music were created by people in their 60s and 70s and even 80s. Not because they were prodigies, but because they had finally accumulated enough life experience to say something truly meaningful. Your life experience is your creative material. Every joy and every sorrow. Every triumph and every failure. Every love and every loss. All of it is raw material waiting to be shaped into something beautiful. You do not need to be a professional artist to be creative. Creativity can express itself in how you arrange flowers, in the stories you tell your grandchildren, in the meals you cook, in the garden you tend, in the letters you write, in the way you decorate your home, in the advice you give, in the way you live your life. Every one of these acts is an expression of the unique perspective that only you possess. A perspective built from 60 years of irreplaceable experience. So if there is a creative impulse inside you that you have been ignoring or dismissing, please give it room to breathe. Your brain is ready for it. Your crystallized intelligence will guide it. And the result will be something that no younger person could create. Because it will carry the weight and beauty of a life fully lived. Let me also address the fear of aging itself. Because it is the elephant in the room for almost everyone in your generation. The aches that were not there 5 years ago. The doctor visits that have become more frequent. The reading glasses. The gray hair. The mirror that shows a face you sometimes do not recognize. These physical changes are real and they can be unsettling. It is natural to feel a sense of loss when your body does not perform the way it used to. But I want you to consider a different perspective. Your body is not failing you. Your body is telling the story of your life. Every line on your face is a chapter. Every scar is a plot point. Every gray hair is a paragraph of experience. Your body has carried you through 6 decades of living. It has worked hard. It has adapted. It has healed from illness and injury. It has kept going when you wanted to stop. It deserves your gratitude, not your criticism. And here is something else that science tells us. The way you think about aging actually affects how you age. Studies have shown that people who hold positive views about getting older live an average of 7.5 years longer than people who hold negative views. 7.5 years. That is not a small difference. Your mindset literally shapes your biology. When you believe that aging is a process of growth and deepening, your brain responds accordingly. It maintains its neural connections more effectively. It produces more of the chemicals associated with well-being. It stays more engaged with the world. But when you believe that aging is nothing but decline, your brain responds to that belief too. It becomes less active, less curious, less resilient. So the story you tell yourself about your own aging is not just a matter of attitude. It is a matter of health. And the story I want you to tell yourself is this: I am not getting older. I am getting deeper. I am not losing my edge. I am refining it. I am not running out of time. I am finally entering the time that belongs to me. This is not denial. This is science. Your brain is more integrated, more wise, and more capable of deep understanding right now than it has ever been. That is a fact. And it is a fact that should fill you with quiet confidence as you look ahead. I want to close with something personal. Something I hope you will carry with you after tonight. You have spent most of your life being strong for other people, holding things together when they threatened to fall apart, showing up when you were exhausted, smiling when you wanted to cry, pushing forward when you wanted to give up. And you did all of this so quietly that most people around you probably have no idea how hard it was. They saw the finished product, the stable home, the reliable income, the calm presence. They did not see the struggle behind it, the doubt, the fear. The nights when you lay awake wondering if you were doing enough, if you were good enough, if everything was going to be okay. I want you to know that it was enough. You were enough. You are enough. Every single day of your life has contributed to the extraordinary person you are right now. Nothing was wasted. Not the good days and not the bad ones. Not the victories and not the defeats. Not the laughter and not the tears. All of it together has made you who you are. And who you are is someone whose brain carries a depth of wisdom that most people will never achieve. Someone whose heart has been tested by fire and emerged more compassionate, not less. Someone whose very existence is proof that human beings can endure astonishing challenges and come out the other side not just intact but genuinely magnificent. The world may not always show you the respect you deserve. Youth culture dominates the media. Speed is valued over depth. Novelty is prized over wisdom. And sometimes it can feel like there is no place left for someone who remembers what it was like to wait for a song on the radio. But I promise you this. The things that live inside you cannot be replaced by any technology. The patience you carry. The resilience you have built. The wisdom you have earned. The love you have given. The strength you have shown. These things are irreplaceable. They are the rarest and most precious resources on earth. And they belong to you. So tonight as you settle in, I want you to take a slow, deep breath. Feel the weight of the day lift just a little. And know that you do not need to prove anything to anyone anymore. You have already proven everything that matters. You have lived a life of courage and dedication and love. And the best part is that the story is not over. Not even close. The next chapter is waiting for you. And it is going to be the most beautiful one yet. Because for the first time you get to write it entirely for yourself. With the full power of your magnificent brain guiding every word. Sleep well tonight. You have earned it. Tomorrow is yours. And it is going to be wonderful.